Oh, I just told Paul he had to. Okay.
Oh, I mean,
Okay, so this should be on, Andrea?
yeah.
Get your invite? Do you guys have it?
I did, I have it on that, yeah, we didn't on this thing.
Yeah, and you know what, we're putting it, we're, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, I think we're ready to start. You guys ready? Oh. Okay. Yes. Pardon me?
Oh, thank you.
How you doing? Doing okay? Okay. So you're gonna watch whenever anybody signs in. You're gonna think after we do these.
Turn the computer around, put an image of the flag, that's what I can say.
You know what? Yeah. I think it's in the senior center. That's
Want to get it?
no. It's just been disinfected already. Yeah, just have a seat and we'll look at you. All right? Yeah, just sit. You can sit. We'll look at you.
She said sit and we'll look at you. Okay.
Look where she's sitting. Where she's sitting. Are you ready? You ready? Okay. Okay. We're going to open this public hearing with a salute to the flag. Everybody please join us and look at that emblem of. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, everybody, please be seated. All right, first of all, we'd like to welcome everybody for being here tonight. You may go ahead. Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming. And first, what we'd like to do is introduce everybody to the town board members who are on the left and right. So from my I'm Betsy Moss. I'm supervisor of the town of Unionvale. This is Andrea Casey, who's very busy at the moment, our town clerk. And then I'll let you gentlemen go across that way and introduce yourselves.
Jim Nelson, I'm the attorney for the town of Unionville. John Wells, councilman of the town of Unionville. Kevin Gerlin, councilman of the town of Unionville. Mary Gucci, town of Unionville supervisor. As your back, councilman of the
I see that Councilman Steve Frazier is,
Thank you, Rita, Dutchess County legislator, representing District 1 in Unionville and Beacon.
Councilman Frazier is outside the building, but he's on Zoom here, so
Yes, I had a conflict at work that I couldn't resolve.
I do not see him.
Will be attending here.
not yet, but he maybe. Councilman Frazier, are you present?
Yes, I had a conflict here at work that I couldn't resolve.
Can you hear him? He's en route. Oh, he's going to rejoin remotely. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here and for those introductions. At this point in the hearing, I'd like to request, we need a nomination for a hearing chairperson. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, Supervisor Moss being the chairperson, say aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, motion carries. I'd like to note also that the resolution of the board authorizing this public hearing and the affidavit of publication of the official notice have been entered into the record by the town clerk. At this point, I'm gonna speed up a little bit because I know everybody's looking at their clocks, but we have general rules of procedure that we'd like to explain to everybody. One is after the opening comments from myself and various board members that want to say anything, we will have written comments. They will be read first, those that arrived in time. The rest will be put into the record later. Everyone will get a chance to speak, and everybody will be able to express their thoughts about this proposed annexation. Speakers that have signed in, which I have a list here, the ones that are specifically saying yes, those people will be called on first in that, or after the written comments. And then if at the end of all of these signed up speakers, if anybody feels, I will ask everybody if there's anybody else who'd like to add to or speak that maybe you weren't quite ready to before, you are more than welcome. You just have to come on up, identify yourself. Anybody speaking will please come up and sit in the chair in front of the computer. The town clerk will adjust the mute. I had said you had to push the button down to unmute yourself. You do not. The town clerk will take care of it for you. Just sit down and speak to the boards and let us know what thoughts you have or what's on your mind. Okay, so signed up first, and then we will ask everybody if anybody else chooses to speak. Speakers will be permitted to speak for 3 minutes. No one can cede their time to another speaker. We typically give a 20-second warning for those that are getting close to 3 minutes, so you know it's time to wrap up if you're not sure. Extra time may be given if the boards consider it necessary, and whether or not you've signed up in advance. If you're on Zoom and you haven't signed up in advance, but based on something you hear tonight, you wanna say something or express your opinion, you can use the hand motion sign, and the town clerk will give me the signal, and we'll be calling on those people from home on Zoom in the order in which they sign up. They let us know that they would like to speak. So people at home, people in the room, anybody that wishes to speak tonight will be able to. So that being said, as chair, I guess I'm going to start with an opening presentation to review the purpose of tonight's hearing. And the purpose is we're talking about the annexation of 76.90 acres of 500 gifted Unionville parkland parcels in the town of Beekman. Now, on the town board tables on both sides, and I believe on the table in the middle of the room where the computer is, you can see the parcel access map outlining the parcel 1 through 5. The parcel 1 is 10.40 acres of 50.46. Parcel 2 is 22.20 acres. Parcel 3 is 23.2. Parcel 4 is 4.9 deeded acres. All are in Beekman. Parcel 5 is 16.2 deeded acres in Beekman. It abuts parcel 1, which straddles the Beekman and Unionville line. Now, what the board hopes to gain tonight is we really want to be able to get some questions answered about whether it is in the public interest for the annexation to go ahead or not. Now, from our perspective, we're going to be looking at a few things, and I think I did want to comment and talk about a little bit about the history of Tymor Park, because I do notice from hearing people talk, and I guess some social media has been reported to us, that there is a little bit of a misnomer about Tymor Park. Now, When Tymor Park was gifted to the town of Unionvale, it started in 1971, and parcels continually were gifted until 1978. They were all gifted to the residents of the town of Unionvale and their guests. So this gift was given by Ralph and Jean Webster Connor in honor of her parents, Glenford McKinney and his wife, Jean Webster. I wanted to read for you an interesting thing, just to give everybody a little bit of flavor about Tymor Park, called Tymor Forest, and then before it became a dairy barn and other things. But this is from 1975, and it was written by the family and given to the town. Tymor Forest was given as a public park to the people of Unionvale in memory of Glenford McKinney and his wife, Jean Webster, by their children. Tymor Forest presently consists of 500 acres, including Furnace Pond and over 1 mile of the length of Fishkill Creek, a natural trout stream of considerable fame. Most of the park will remain forever wild as a nature preserve, but modern recreation facilities have been provided by the donors at suitable locations, including a swimming pool, baseball fields, picnic grounds, and a boathouse. Without going into all the interesting history of Glenford McKinney, which we'll be doing a lot of next year, Jean Connor and Ralph Connor, daughter and son-in-law of the McKinneys, inherited Tymor Farm in 1934 and have lived there since 1949. Mr. Connor purchased additional properties now included in the park. Tymor Farm planted over 600 acres of cropland and maintained a registered Jersey cattle herd of over 200 head. You notice the barn that we're sitting in is representative of those days. Until the Tymor jerseys were dispersed in August of 1971, the farm was widely known amongst Jersey breeders for a combination of high volume milk production and show winning style. When farming on this scale, in this location, ceased to be profitable, Mr. and Mrs. Connor were encouraged by their daughter and son-in-law, Sarah and Alexander Hart, to seek a way to preserve for all time the unique beauty of Tymor's setting in the Clove Valley. The entire family is grateful to the community for embracing their gift and treating it with such ever-loving care. And they go on to explain the history of the iron mines and that sort of thing. I just wanted to underscore the fact that the residents of Unionvale really love this park, and they do believe they treat it and with ever-loving care and will continue to do so for many, many years to come. Now, next year is the 50th anniversary of Tymor Park. So starting in August of 2021, we're going to have a celebration, which is one of the reasons, one of the impetuses for this discussion tonight, because we thought after all these years, it would be a very wonderful thing if we could get the park in its entirety into the town of Unionvale. Now, while the park was left to the town of Unionvale residents and their guests, the park has been used by many neighbors for things, all of those neighbors did different things, but there are hikers and day campers, fishermen and fisherwomen in Furnace Pond. There are walkers, horseback riders, and people that just wander around to look at the natural beauty on either side of the elongated Clove Valley. Now, the residents of Beekman have enjoyed all of those activities in addition to enhance property values for some living right next to a very large uninhabited park. The residents of Beekman have always been welcome guests in Tymor Park and still are today. They have not, however, ever paid for any maintenance of Tymor Park. They use it freely, but without obligation. And we think that that's important because this hearing is about determining whether it is in the public interest for the annexation to go ahead or not. Now, we will look at things like the benefits and impacts on the land being annexed. From our perspective, they will still be cared for and treated the same as they have been since 1971. It's very important to the town of Unionvale to maintain these lands and properly care for them, and that will continue. The benefits and impacts on the town of Unionvale we will be looking at. Now, from our perspective, Unionvale residents will benefit, one, by not being subject to the intermittent taxation, depending on who the current Beekman administration is. And we went back and looked, and we have paid taxes on all town-owned property in Beekman every decade since this land first became municipal property. That's not against the law, but typically municipalities don't pay taxes, and it has been a burden for the residents of the town of Unionvale. Number two, the constables will have full jurisdiction of the entire park, as opposed to what we have now, which is the Unionvale part, and we do what we can in the other part, but we have no jurisdiction. Typically, the sheriffs are called in after the fact. This could be discussed later on by some comments from other people, but it is important to us that the constables have full jurisdiction. And thirdly, the annexation is independent, regardless of what people have said out there. This annexation is independent of the prior cell tower application. It is raised, the cell tower was raised in the resolution, and it is raised tonight as an example of Beekman's interference in Unionvale's ability to determine the use of its own parklands. The cell tower was a 2020 budget item for the company Verizon. They approached us in 2019. They said it was a 2020 budget item. We're at the end of 2020 and we have heard nothing about the future or a 2021 budget. So this is independent of that cell tower, regardless of what you guys have heard or read on Beekman Rec's Facebook page and then what some people were saying. They may have misunderstood, but this is independent of that. It's just illustrative of what we feel the government of Beekman has done in our place, since it's our land and we own the land. Now, as far as impacts to the land, Judge Greenwald found when we were served with an Article 78 by the town of Beekman, Judge Greenwald found that Unionvale properly conducted its environmental review, which resulted in a finding of no cell tower adverse environmental impacts, and that it properly conducted its Monroe County evaluation, finding that Unionvale was the proper body to conduct the review of the tower application back when that was being reviewed. This decision is currently, I think, on appeal, but it does show that we took our duties very, very seriously, and a judge did find in the favor of how seriously we would take any impacts to this land. So that's looking at it from the town of Unionvale's perspective. We also want to look at the benefits and impacts on the town of Beekman and on the residents of Beekman. From our perspective, nothing changes. We're not on the tax rolls of Beekman currently. There's no financial change. The residents use our park and enjoy our park and have always been welcome. So we don't see where anything is going to change at all for the residents of Beekman. And I think we all think as a larger community, that's very important. Now, as far as benefits to or impacts on the Unionvale Fire District or the Beekman Fire District, the Arlington School District, Dutchess County-wide Water District, and Dutchess County Resource Recovery, all of those, the two county entities do not serve our parcels, town-owned parcels in the town of Beekman. So there's no impact on them whatsoever. We fully expect to continue to pay Beekman Fire District taxes, which apparently we've always paid. And we don't expect that to change because they are the district that those parcels reside in. So from that perspective, the benefits and impacts don't really change. It appears to us that the biggest impact is on the town residents of the town of Unionvale for all the reasons that I have described. So with that being said, from my perspective, I felt like there was some misunderstanding about the park and about how we look at the park. I wanted to share that with you. And with that being said, I'd like to suggest that any other, maybe Supervisor Cavucci or any other board member can indicate that they would like to speak, and I will call them. Councilman Welsh, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I would just
Councilman
like
Welsh.
some general comments. You know, the property is actually.
Can you hear him?
by the town of Unionvale.
Or hold the space bar down, maybe, while you're talking.
Okay. All right. Since the town of Unionvale owns the property, we are responsible.
Let's see him.
This is,
I don't see you in the Zoom invite.
I joined it.
I see it. Yes. Okay, if you just hold the bar down. Thank you, Councilman.
Okay. All right. Because we are the owners, I think it's important we're responsible and that we do everything we can to be responsible owners, including control of our property. We currently have no authority over the property. That's a big issue. We're planning some activity in the very near future.
Sorry, Councilman Welsh, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. The
Yeah.
computer's still connecting to audio. I don't know why we can't hear you on, I know we can hear you in the room, but
We're sorry to interrupt. It's just that we have to capture this on Zoom so people at home can hear it. Do you want to switch or go to the one in the middle of the room?
Can you hear me now?
We still can't hear him. I got a text.
My 3 minutes are up. Okay. All right. Sorry for the technical delay.
You glad you didn't bring your computer?
Anyway, in the very near future, we've had engineers reviewing the dam at the end of Furnace Pond. And we've had engineers reviewing that for 10 or 12 years. We're getting close to a construction phase to repair it for safety reasons. And based on that, I think it's very important that the property be part of the town of Unionvale, not only for the overseeing of the construction and building permits, but also to have constables patrolling that property on a regular basis. You know, it's different. I think it's best interest of Beekman as well, because this is an awkward situation. Where else is there two towns that have jurisdiction over the same piece of property? Especially when one town owns the property. So I think to improve relations with our wonderful neighbors to the south, I think it would be better if the town line was covering these 5 parcels. Basically, that's my concern, and I'm hoping people see it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Would any other councilman wish to speak?
Sure, I'll just,
Okay.
I'll be quick. All right, for those at home that don't know who I am, I'm Kevin Durland. So what I'd like to do is just kind of just agree with my peers here and reiterate my belief here for the annexation. And it is, I think it's very important for us to be a part of this process. You know, namely the ideas or reasons that they brought up are pretty big for us. You know, the constable jurisdiction, I think that's a big deal. You know, I'd like to see the constables be able to patrol all of our lands. You know, I think it's important for both towns, frankly, for the sheriffs to have to be called to come into our park when we already have constables that patrol our park seems like an odd thing. You know, the intermittent taxes, I think that's a fairly strange deal. And like John said, that puts us all in an awkward position. The cell tower, I know as Betsy brought up that the cell tower was brought up amongst maybe residents on social media or things like that, that our idea was to go through this process to be able to get the cell tower. I think that is a falsehood. It may have given us a reason or a kind of prompted us to look at this process. But like Betsy said, that deal is off the table as it currently stands. So with that, I'd like to just agree with everybody and, you know, at least from the Unionvale perspective. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councilman.
Councilman Frazier, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. I had a conflict with work. I concur with the points that have been made and can expand somewhat on the constable's jurisdiction. The dam for Tymor Pond is an attractive spot for after-hours gatherings, many of which our constables have been called out to, and they really don't have any authority to vacate the people there that are there after hours and shouldn't be. They would have to call in the sheriff's department rather than handling it themselves because of the jurisdictional question because of the town line. I also, when I first became a councilman here in Unionvale, I approached the Beekman Town Board at one of their board meetings and requested that the town of Unionvale be exempted for these parcels so that we wouldn't be paying the property tax on them. And that town board granted that exemption. And I had assumed that we had been exempt since then, but apparently this is going back and forth depending on the whim of the present, the board that's in power at the time. So this would be beneficial for Unionvale in that, we would not have that burden of property tax in the future. And it would release us from the school district that the town board of Beekman cannot exempt us from.
Anybody else want to make any comments? Supervisor Cavucci, anybody?
No, I think our.
Oh, okay. Going to speak at the end, Mr. Ackerman? Okay. All right. So at this point then, the Beekman Town Attorney will make some comments at the end and we'll wait until that time. So at this point, I think if anybody else is finished, I'm going to read the one email that I received before I came down here, and you don't have any other written ones printed, do you? Okay. And this was the resolution 2034 is the annexation resolution that the town board unanimously approved from the town of Unionvale. And our resident, Dennis Dunning, 7 Jordan Court, Poquag, New York, wrote, as a resident of Unionvale, I support resolution 20-34. So you can read that on our town board, on our town website, and you probably have the same one. So that being the only written comment that we have received prior to coming down here this evening, I will use this written list. Ms. Casey, okay. So we will now begin to call on people that have signed up and specifically wanting to speak. The first being Emery Bernhardt, if you would come up and have a seat at the computer.
Just for the point of order, I believe that the town of Beekman can receive a written comment. Do you want to have a written record now?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I believe that the town of Beekman is in possession of written comments. Do you want those written read in the record now?
Yeah, you had some, I thought they were all sending them over to our town clerk, but no, that's great. Do you? Yeah, no, I apologize. Do you mind, now, in order to read them so that they can be heard by everybody, Mr. Bernhardt, do you mind waiting for a couple of minutes and we'll ask the town clerk to sit there so everybody can hear? Thank you. Do you mind going over there and reading them there? Thank you.
Okay, so I have received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 emails for the town of Beekman. To whom it may concern, I am absolutely against the annexation of lands in the town of Beekman by town of Unionvale. I do not want to potentially destroy the rural landscape of the area since Beekman would not have any input on the usage of the land, and I feel it is not in the best interest of the town of Beekman. Furthermore, I don't believe that the town of Unionvale has acted as a responsible neighbor when they decided not to pay their fair share for the nearby library services that their residents use. Beekman's taxpayers have been subsidizing Unionvale residents' use of their library. This is a sad reflection of Unionvale taking advantage of Beekman and the neighboring towns with wonderful libraries. I am concerned that the intentions of Unionvale may be politically misguided and possibly driven by greed. Sincerely, Linda Jacobs. This email is from Robin Bettinger. I apologize if I butchered her name, but I cannot attend the public hearing on November 23rd due to COVID concerns, but I do wish to make my opinion officially known. Please read this at the meeting. I am completely against the town of Unionville being allowed to annex the 5 uninhabited properties which are situated in the town of Beekman but owned by Unionville. This land is currently part of Tymor Park, but if Unionville is allowed to annex it, they will once again go to Albany and request parkland alienation. If this is granted, it means they will be able to use the property for purposes other than parkland. They will then rezone it and erect the cell tower that Beekman fought so hard against last year. This also means that Beekman would have no standing to protest the cell tower since the land would now be part of Unionville after annexation. I am completely against this tower being built because it is so close to some Beekman residents' houses that it will lower the value of their properties, which is not fair to these residents of Beekman. The town of Unionville should not be allowed to annex this land. The town of Beekman will receive no tax revenue or other compensation from this tower. All the profit will benefit Unionville residents. Unionville should find another place to put this tower. Tymor is a big park. They can find another place to put it if that is not, to put it that is not near our residents. Again, thank you, Robin Bettinger. The annexation and zoning change of the Tymor parcels to Unionville appear to be construct a cell tower based on information and documents from the Unionville supervisor. I don't believe most people want a cell tower within 500 feet from their yard. There are appraiser websites and realty websites that point out that these may affect property values as well. Therefore, I disagree with the annexation because of the potential of cell towers and the associated property value impact. Realistically, I think it will happen. If that's the case, the best situation would be for them to use a parcel that is further away from the DeForest neighborhood. If Beekman Town can do anything to influence this, that it would be appreciated. Thank you, Maureen Mullally. I wish to have the following read at the town meeting at Tymor Park. To the residents of Unionville, the supervisor of the town of Unionville, and to whomever else it may concern. I am unable to attend the public hearing regarding the annexation of Beekman property for the proposed cell tower due to COVID-19 concerns and personal quarantine. However, let me assure you that if I was not quarantining, I would be the first to attend this meeting and you would hear my voice then. My first question is to the former corporate agent who now operates as the supervisor of Unionville. Why is it you would rather put the tower on the Beekman side of your park? Is it perhaps because the residents on the other side of the park live in Millbrook and they have the money and the means to make you regret devaluing their property if you erect a giant cell tower in their backyard? The houses that back up to Tymor Park on Beekman's side are small. They are most likely the occupants' life savings, whereas Millbrook can afford to stand the sight of a cell tower in the distance. Should they? Well, you have a big park. It has an equestrian range that's barely used, lots of nice mountain foothills. Maybe find somewhere to erect your giant cell tower that won't impact the lives of a ton of residents who are seeing none of the tax revenue from this tower. That's the other thing. For whatever reason, some of Tymor Park crosses onto Beekman property. You would steal part of our town to put up a tower of metal wires, some gargantuan monstrosity. I work in the town of Beacon on the Hudson River. There are massive towers there that are used by Stewart Airport. They are ugly. The house across from them is beautiful, and the property value there was only raised by owners remodeling it dramatically, including an in-ground saltwater pool and building onto it. It's still for sale. No one wants it because there are giant towers directly across from it. But that's cool to inflict on Beekman, right? I get it. You would rather erect it on the Beekman end because you don't want to deal with the backlash that would come from Millbrook, a historically wealthy upper middle class town, because you are far more likely to win against us and would rather not take the chance of losing against them. But I want to think of the people you're hurting with us. I would never buy a house with a massive tower directly behind it. No one else I've spoken to would either. Unionville was a town Unionville was a town I've long been looking at buying a house in simply for its rural beauty and the hilly areas with lovely views. but I don't think I'd like to buy a house in your town anymore. I'll stick with my hometown of Beekman instead. What's worse is that this land belongs to Beekman, whether it's part of your park or not. You'd like to steal it, rezone it. It's parkland currently surrounded by residential, but you turned it into commercial in a heartbeat and completely crushed the property value of the houses backing up onto it. The house on Dawn Road that sold for $415,000. It will not sell for that price again, not with a huge tower there. And really, that's not a major amount of money. Some people don't have a whole lot more than their houses. They hope to one day retire and sell their house and live relatively comfortable off that money as well as a pension. Would you buy a house with a cell tower casting a massive shadow over it? I wouldn't, especially not when there's a great deal of Tymor Park that has no houses near it, where you could put up a tower and have it relatively hidden by trees. Yes, we'd all have to look at it in the distance then, but at least it wouldn't be within a hop, skip, and a jump of someone's home then. Seems like a fair trade. We all have to see, but it's not directly behind someone's house. Property values in Beekman don't get trashed because you stole our land and you get money. But God forbid you Unionville residents have to suffer a little unpleasantness in the park's overall landscape for the tax revenue you're going to get from the tower. Beekman objects strongly. I object strongly. Please consider alternatives such as not putting the tower in someone's backyard. Best regards, a resident of Beekman, New York. And those are the comments that were emailed to me, the town clerk of Beekman.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to read one more because this gentleman wanted to come. Let me get the written ones out of the way. Sorry. All right, I'm going to read one last written one that he texted it over because he wanted to be here and he couldn't get here. And he had sent it just in case. And he is Mr. Brzezowski, but he's on which street? Blueberry Drive in the town of Unionville. And he says, I don't really have anything to say, but I'm in favor of Unionville taking full control over the Tymor lots that are in the town of Beekman. We don't need Beekman telling us what we are allowed to do with Tymor property. This is the same town that allows mobile home communities and cluster housing, which I feel devalues a town. That was it, right? Okay. All right. So that was the last written one. Mr. Bernhardt, do you mind coming up? Sorry for the delay.
Thank you. Again, my name is Amory Bernhardt. Real quick, I just wanted to go over the talk about the cell tower. I know it comes up. And when I just did a basic, just objective document analysis of the proposal, I came up with this. I came up with 6 reasons for the annexation. And the 6th one is kind of a accumulation, but it's 6 reasons. So the property is a gift and you own it. And you cite that twice in the document, pretty much. You give support for it. It's about 15%. Property is contiguous with the town property. You talk about that and continuity of the property line. You cite that twice, about 15%. Beekman is taxing the property. You cite that once, about 8%. Constable has no jurisdiction to patrol. You cite that once. It's about 8%. And then the 5th reason, the cell tower construction is cited 6 times throughout your document. About 46% of your document is cell tower discussions. And then about 8%, you kind of sum it up and say you don't have full use of your lands. So those are the reasons. I think one reason why people think it's a cell tower construction proposal is because 46% of your document says cell tower proposal. So that seems like the driving factor of why people would think that, because it's the bulk of what you put into the document. So that being said, I have a few things I just want to discuss quickly. One is I understand there's different opinions on patrol and jurisdiction. I understand the geographical area of employment. Unless you would enter some contract with Beekman, your constable can't patrol those towns. I understand that. But there are other ways besides the annexation. I'm not saying there are easier ways, but there are other ways, such as contracts and stuff like that. I've seen it done in Westchester County. Second of all, the cell tower really bothers me as a father and having young kids. And you said it before, this is 76 acres. Tymor has 500 acres. I'm the closest house to this tower. I think it's 506 feet or something like that. I have found very few people, I wouldn't say none because that'd be a lie, there are a couple. Majority of people I talk to, when I tell them they want to put a cell tower in 500 feet from my house, they're like, I'm so sorry to hear that. They're like, is there anything you can do? Nobody says, no big deal. I'm sorry. There are a couple people who are just like, it'll be all right. And speaking of cell towers, there are studies out there, and I understand that they can't say causation, they say correlation, right? So we understand that we can't necessarily prove this in an evidence-based study. And some of those are very scrutinous to get to the facts on. It takes years. Look at smoking and cancer. It took years before the studies got to that point. So when we look at corollary studies and we look at the things that revert, 400 meters, that's a safe distance, I would say. That's what I'm reading, 400 meters, not 500 feet. I understand the FCC says you can't use health reasons. I get it. But I'm just saying, as a neighbor, if this tower does go forward, I understand this is not what you're saying this is about. However, I want to be put on record, 400 meters. That's the safe distance is what they're saying for people. That being said, I hope that anything that comes out of this, it doesn't, last time I think when we had the tower going up, it was very discouraging because we spoke, and the information that came back was there were 0 Unionville residents opposed to the cell tower. All the residents that were opposed to it were from Beekman. It was in our backyard. And if you asked any of your residents out there and said, listen, is it okay if I put a tower 500 feet from your house? You have young kids. And there are studies out there that do say there's a huge correlation between children and the RF rays, and they get exposed to it. I understand the health you can't use. It's cumulative though. It's cumulative. Is that the 20-second mark?
20 seconds.
Thank you. So that being said, just to bring it together, I would hope that one, we would consider a place further off than 500 feet from my house, hopefully at least 400 meters. And two, that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bernhardt. Where's that list? Here we go. Next up, Gina LaMonica. Is it LaMonica or LaMinina? It's LaMonica, okay.
Hi, I'm Gina LaMonica, and I am a resident of Beekman. I live on DeForest Lane, where one of these lots or parcels is located. I disagree with the annexation strongly because this is a workaround to get the tower built. Because the minute you annex this property, Beekman no longer has a say. They can no longer appeal or take to court or help us fight this. You will not listen to us because we are not your constituents, and you'll just erect the cell tower 500 feet from our homes. And it is proven, you have your lane appraisals document, but they are incorrect. They are in cahoots, I think. This has been proven to affect property values. And as previously stated, these homes are our life savings. Everything that I have worked for, I'm 57, is in this house. My life savings is in this house. And you don't care. You're just going to put up this tower. The minute that you annex this land, you're going to call your friend at Homeland and get this started. And we will have nothing to say about it. 90% of home buyers and renters do not want to live under a tower. It's been proven. There are multiple studies. In fact, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, declares cell towers hazards and nuisances. And you actually have to document before they'll let you have a mortgage that you're not within the fall radius of the tower and that you're a certain number of feet away before they'll even give you a mortgage. So this is obvious why you're doing this, because this property has belonged to Unionville for 50 years since Gene McKinney Connor deeded it. And now you're doing this so that you can put up a tower without us having a say. It's so obvious that it's insulting for you to say that that's not why you're doing it. Because for 50 years, nobody bothered. We don't disturb the land. It's natural. There's endangered species there. And you're going to go in there the minute you annex this without us having any say, and we live there. And I have a picture of your computer rendering of what this monstrosity will look like. It is a visual nightmare. It's going to damage our views, our visuals of our beautiful homes, the pastoral views that we have with this monster up there. This is a crime. I don't know. And it's misleading. It does not provide Wi-Fi. We have Wi-Fi in our homes provided by our our cable companies. Yes, you can access the internet, but it's not free. Data is expensive. Nobody wants to go over their data. So it's not going to provide Wi-Fi. The only reason you're trying to annex now is to get the property out of Beekman's hands for the cell tower to go up. As Mr. Bernhard mentioned, you mentioned it 6 times in your resolution to petition.
Thank you, Mrs. Untitled. Okay, thank you very much. Next up. Pat Cartolemi?
Good evening. So I just wanted to, from the town of Union Vale.
Yeah, you give your street and all, okay,
Yeah, Pat
great.
Cartolemi, 11 Rose Court,
Thank you.
LaGrangeville, New York. I wanted to come up and echo some of the comments from the town of Union Vale board. I agree that the annexation should go forward. I think a lot of people are confused with the cell tower. The cell tower was probably one of the processes that started this process. It's not the reasoning for the process, the way I understand it. Also, with the cell tower being approved, it has to go through a planning process where neighboring communities and properties would be notified of it and would have a say in the planning process. Again, I want to echo the fact of the constables having no jurisdiction there. I think that's a dangerous thing to have. Response time of the sheriffs is anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to getting to a piece of property if there's an issue. Also, to protect the park, the town of Union Vale will have control over it at that point for all parcels owned there. Also, the town of Union Vale has paid taxes over years to own its own property that was parkland. I don't feel that that's correct. Everybody will still have access to the park. Nobody's losing access over this. So the Beekman residents will have just as much access as they did before. With the 50-year anniversary coming up for the town of Union Vale, I think it's great that we'll be able to have the whole park as one whole entity again. And then also with the upcoming dam project, I think that that's very important for the town of Union Vale to have control of the property around the dam. We might not know if the dam has to come down or if the dam will be fixed in place. So that's something that's got to be an issue that's got to come up in the near future. It's got to. I think we're going to protect the parkland, and it's going to be used as a park from now and to the foreseeable future. So I think it's best that this goes ahead. We control the town. The town of Union Vale will control their park property, and that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Cartolemi. Okay, Lizette Hitzman? You want to walk her over, Pat? Maybe not. She's good.
I don't have a lot to say, but I thought this was the public hearing on annexing the parcels that we own that are located in the town of Beekman. And what it's sounded to me like it's a discussion of cell towers, and that isn't what this public hearing is about. I'm speaking as a former 20-year town supervisor, believe it or not. The following is my opinion on annexing 5 parcels owned by the town, located in the town of Beekman. I've heard a lot about cell towers. That's not what this hearing is about. This hearing is about annexing these parcels. That is a logical move and it should be carried out. To make these parcels part of the town of Unionville would be favorable, both for jurisdictional purposes and financial purposes. In 2001, the town of Beekman Board of Appeals reduced the assessment because we were paying taxes on those parcels to $188,400. This is still a lot of money for unimproved wild parcels. Paying town, county, and school taxes is costly. The town of Unionville petitioned and was granted to have the parcels removed from tax rolls in 2004, excepting fire district, we left those on. This remained in effect until 2016 when they were put back on the tax rolls with no notification to the town of Unionville. That was wrong. This was done regardless of the fact that town, county, state, and federal property is exempt from tax. These parcels are unimproved and uninhabited except for wildlife, but are part of our Tymor Park with walking roads mapped out and used. These parcels should be a part of our town. Then decisions can be made by the town board for the benefit of the town, neighboring towns, and town residents, and they could be carried out and not countermanded. I urge the town board to go ahead with the annexation.
Thank you, Mrs. Hitzman.
This up here are copies for you.
Yeah. Okay, next up, we have Corinna Kelly.
Karina Kelly, 239 West Clove Mountain Road in the town of Unionville. The topic of annexation of Unionville land has come up prior to my term on the town board, during my years on the town board, and now continues after. While I feel this should have been addressed years ago, maybe even as early as the gifting of the land by the Connor family, I am concerned over the timing at addressing it at this point. I believe transparency is always the best practice. While some may not agree, transparency does allow residents to see the thought process that went into the decision. Unfortunately, the decision to move ahead with the land in Tymor Park to be designated for lease to the cell tower company due to conflicts between Unionville and Beekman resulted in litigation. The land annexation from Beekman's jurisdiction at this time is an effort to circumvent the legal process and plow ahead despite the consequences. Over the past year, the supervisor and town board have brought up issues of the town operating budget and addressing shortfalls due to the coronavirus pandemic. In the current economic climate with no exact end date in sight, spending money voluntarily in legal fees is unwise at best and detrimental at its worst. The part I find offensive is that this public hearing is really just a formality. The money to prepare the 96-page petition for annexation and the 105-page resolution for annexation has already been spent without the knowledge or approval of the residents of the town that the board members are supposed to be representing. Beekman has already presented litigation in response to the cell tower project and will likely pursue legal action against Unionville that the town will need to spend additional funds to cover. In the constant contact communication I received today, one quote is, "Unionville Town Board will deliberate about your comments and decide if this is in our best interest." And in the same communication, again I quote, "Our town board found that altering our town boundary to include all Tymor parcels would be in the best interest of the residents of Unionville." So since the town board has already concluded that this resolution is in the best interest of the residents of Unionville, the resolution will be passed most likely unanimously, without concern for any residents' input, has been a pattern of this town board. Thank you.
Just one correction, that resolution did pass. 2034 passed. That was at the beginning of the process. So just to be clear, so there still is a little confusion, but we'd like to make sure everybody understands that. That's the one that everybody can see on the website. Carol Ewan? Can you give your street address and your town, please?
Carol Ewan, 89 Mayfair Road, Pocoig. With respect to the town of Unionville, this is supposed to be a meeting about annexation of property. Sadly, it coincides with the town of Beekman residents opposing a cell tower to be put on that property. So it does smell a little bit. One thing, I was looking through your documents today, you had Exhibit C on your website. I think there were a few Exhibit Cs, but it was about the letter celebrating the 50 years of being gifted 5 parcels of land. And quote unquote, our belief is that while the residents of Unionville have much to gain by the annexing of our 5 parcels into our town, the residents of Beekman have nothing to lose. And I don't agree with that at all. I don't live on DeForest Lane, but I have a cell tower a mile from my house down near Route 52. When Verizon put that tower in, they publicly told us over and over again it would solve the problems along this corridor here. Now they want to put another tower in. And the residents of Beekman do have a lot to lose. They have property values that they can lose. They have not been able to sell a house. There's environmental and ecological concerns. There's major health concerns associated with living with a small amount of space from cell towers. So I understand this is supposed to be about annexing, but it feels like it's an end around in a football game. And I just really encourage you to rethink. I think that there's a lot of smart people in the town of Beekman who see what's happened in the last year. I don't for a minute believe that if this property is not annexed, that you're not going to go to get Verizon in here as soon as possible. Whether you've heard from them this year, whether it's in their budget for next year, it's a done deal. So I just encourage you to rethink this plan because there are a lot of residents in the town of Beekman who have nothing to gain. Thank you.
Okay. Next up would be Mary Jean Calvi. Okay, do you see Mary Jean? You're up if you can hear us and can speak. We'd love to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay. Good evening to everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there tonight, but we had a power outage due to an accident. But I'm glad to join you anyway. I don't have a whole lot to add. What I will say is that I feel like I'm sitting here in the middle of 2 different meetings. One meeting, which I wanted to attend, that has to do with annexation of those 5 parcels. And I do feel that it would be nice to have the entire Tymor Park, Tymor Forest in the town of Unionville. I am a very long-term resident of Unionville. I've probably lived half my life here, raised my children here. And we spent many wonderful days and evenings at Tymor. The other meeting that I seem to be at is about a cell tower meeting. And unfortunately, it seems like whichever side of the boundary line you live on, that's the meeting that you're talking about. And I'm sorry that our Beekman residents feel that way. Again, I am not on the town board. I just really came to this meeting tonight because I wanted to hear information, more information about the annexation. And unfortunately, I am hearing a whole lot about cell towers that haven't even been built. Just one thing to say, where I do live in a very beautiful part of the town of Unionville. And by the way, I may be biased, but I think all of Unionville is beautiful. A few years ago, right, I can't even say maybe 1,000 feet from my property, they came through with these huge monster towers that are supposed to provide electricity to somewhere in Long Island. I'm not even really sure where it's going. I don't believe it does anything for my property values, but they came through anyway. And I guess unfortunately, it's just a part of modern technology. Things happen. We don't want them to happen. I don't know how much say we had in that matter as well. But again, what I really wanted to hear was more about the annexation and not so much about cell towers that may or may not even be happening. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jean Calvi. Next up, Betty Albrecht.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to say that I have lived in both towns, Beekman and Unionvale, for the last 70 years. I have lived on Dorn Road for probably 30 years. And then after I married, I lived on right across Brusco Road. So I've always straddled the park. So of course, it's been a great interest to me and my family. So hearing about all the different things tonight, the cell tower, I don't think it's as much as an issue. Years ago, we knew Mr. Connor, of course, before the park was given over in 1971. And he always had trouble with the town of Beekman back then, no matter what was decided. So for some reason, he was against the town of Beekman. So he actually stopped Lime Mill Road right in the middle, so that the Beekman residents, I guess, weren't allowed to come into the park. And he decided not to give the park to both towns, which was, he was deciding before he gave it over. So there was always controversy with the town of Beekman and the town of Unionvale. So through these years, we have mellowed down the two towns, and of course, town of Beekman always is allowed in the park. I've worked as secretary at the Recreation Center for many years, 25 years. We have never turned any Beekman resident away. So we've kind of gotten along all these years. So it kind of is sort of important, since we own the property, that we have the say to the property. So thinking on the different things, whether the constable isn't allowed to patrol over there. We want to work on the dam, so that's going to take lots of permits and things through the state. So we have a lot of things that we will have to do. And if we own the property, then we can govern the property. So it's very hard to have someone, when you have plans, someone else telling you you can't do it. So being a resident in Unionville now, I think we elect our town board. We elect our town board to make the decisions for our town. So right now, they are asking for your permission to give this land over so we can truly control our land and not someone else telling us what we have to do. So I feel it would be beneficial that if you would consider doing this for our town, nothing changes in your end of the town. So thinking we'll let our town board decide what's best for us, not the town of Beekman telling us what to do. So I'm in favor of whatever the town board would like. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Albrecht. Is Tom Farmer in the room? We had to go, okay. Mrs. Tillman?
And Lizette. She's in good shape. Good job, Betty. First of all, are these, all the stuff that we're hearing tonight, is that going to be available to the public?
Yes.
Like on a videotape or, you know? I'll talk with you, Andrea, because I can't hear 3/4 of what's going on.
It will be, but tell us what you'd like us to hear.
Huh?
Tell us what you'd like us to hear.
What?
She said, tell us what you'd like us to hear.
Okay. First of all, I want to know that this is available to the public, especially me. Is this, if this annexation happens, is this going to open a can of worms worldwide? There are people who have state lines going right through their homes. Is this going to start a whole bunch of lawsuits all over the place? Has anybody thought about that? I do remember Ralph Connor being somewhat concerned about Beekman and other strangers coming in to use the park. And I couldn't hear what you said at the beginning, Betsy, but the beginning of the turnover of the properties was that the park should be used by the members of the community. I don't think he ever thought about these little buttons of property that extend into Beekman as being a problem down the line. And I'm sorry that it's possibly turning out to be such. And as far as the cell tower is concerned, we need something because we have a dead zone here along 55. Not for me, I don't have a cell phone, but for police and fire and rescue and for the common good. But we're not talking about cell tower tonight. We're talking about the annexation. I agree that if we want to do work in the park, we should have the say in the park. And that means, I guess, that the park must be within Unionville town lines. And I guess that's it. Sign me up for number 1 on the copy, Andrea, thank you. And these maps are going to be available up at Town Hall, yes? Thank you.
You can have your own copy.
I'm taking a copy for Jane Geisler.
Okay, take it with you. All right. I don't see. Oh, Eric Gallo. Mr. Gallo, are you still? Oh, come on up.
My name's Eric Gallo. I live on 17 DeForest Lane. I think that the annexation, I would have no issues with. I get it. I get that the property should be yours. I get everything. It's a beautiful park. That's why I live where I live. I'm on the backside. I love the place, right? I love everything about your park. During COVID, I had no other place but to go in my backyard, walk right up and over the mountain with my kids. We enjoy everything. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a no-brainer. But there's a huge but to this. You went about this the wrong way, right? You went about it first with a cell tower, whether it happens or not, I don't really care. But now, right, I have to oppose your annexation because of what you did. I love your park. There's nothing wrong with it. I think, it's just the way you went about things. It leads me to believe that you're going to do some backdoor stuff that's going to affect my life and everybody on that road. So I have to oppose it. Like I said, I think it's a shame that we're doing this, right? I agree. I get it. If the cell phone wasn't even was never in the past or what I had to deal with that, then I'd say it's a no-brainer. I love your park. I love the property. I think it's great. But since that went about that way, it's leaving a bad taste in my mouth on what the future holds. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we have, and last signed up on the list, Joel Foley. He's online? Okay, well, we can, is Mr. Foley, let's see, can we find him?
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Hi, Mr. Foley, go ahead.
Good evening. I happen to live right next door to Mr. Bernhardt. So this thing would be, looming over my house as well. I work in the construction industry. I'm around cell towers fairly often. It's not an accident that the two that have been around in the last 5 years had signs out 1,000 feet from them telling us to stay away because of radio frequency. You're running a big construction project and the guys are working and they see that sign there. Nobody, not one of them was, oh yeah, that sounds like it's okay. I don't want my kids sitting there underneath that thing. I don't want the people that someday when I retire and people drive up my driveway to potentially buy my home to look up on the hill right there and have the sun blocked because it's going to be right there looming over the top of my house. Betsy, would you buy a house with a cell tower 500 feet behind it? Mr. Nelson, Mr. Frazier, would any of you buy a house that had a cell tower 500 feet behind it? I'm hearing dead air here. Am I mic off? Yeah, I'm not hearing you.
No, we're not having a discussion tonight, Mr. Foley. You're going to share with us your views, and
that's my view. That I don't believe that any of you guys would want to buy a house with it, and you guys are basically going to, ruin my chances of ever being able to sell this house and retire someplace. That's pretty much it. The thing totally smells. It's not an accident that this all of a sudden came up after the cell tower came up. So that's all. I'm really disappointed in all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Now, let me see. I don't see anybody else up wishing to speak. Mrs. Glavich, wait a minute, there is Mrs. Glavich. Mrs. Glavich, would you like to speak? Can you unmute yourself first?
I wasn't sure if I was going to speak, but I think I would like to speak. I live on Lime Mill Road. I'm a resident of the town of Beekman. And the road that I live on is adjacent to one of the parcels. I'm hearing some discussion about why Unionvale wants to annex this property. One of the points is that Unionvale will have control to do what they want to do with the land. And having lived here for almost 15 years, I don't think I have ever seen a situation where the town of Beekman, the land town of Beekman, or the Beekman town board or the government has ever interfered with anything you've ever to do. So I don't think I'd buy that argument. I'm not sure if it's valid. Maybe there's something that I'm not aware of, but I have never seen a situation where Beekman land somehow wasn't allowed, you weren't allowed to do what you wanted to do on that land. It's supposed to be a park for people to use and maintain and be wild. So I'm not sure if I buy that argument. The second point that Unionvale makes is that the Congress will have jurisdiction. Well, over the years, I have been in touch with both Beekman and Unionvale town boards over situations where people from out of town, as evidenced by license plates from out of state, using the park, parking in front of my house, suspicious behavior I've witnessed. I have expressed my concerns. I have asked for patrols. And honestly, I think the responses were that we don't have constables because we don't have the money to pay them. So I'm not sure if having constables or constables having jurisdiction is even an argument that's valid either, because I don't feel like the town has shown any interest in patrolling that land anyway. With the concerns that I have expressed, I feel like they have fallen on deaf ears over the course of many years. And it seems to me, and I kind of agree with the people talking about the cell tower, it seems to me after hearing this meeting that the timing is really kind of strange, that all of a sudden, you want to annex this land and oh, by the way, it happens to coincide with wanting to put up the cell tower. So I kind of feel like that's probably the reason. I would oppose this annexation because honestly, I don't trust the current government to do the right thing. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Earlier, Colleen Hayes was uncertain. Mrs. Hayes, Ms. Hayes, would you be interested in saying something now? She's not online. Okay, I saw Colleen. I didn't know who that was. Okay. I do not see, do you, Ms. Casey, see anybody?
No one else is raising their hand online.
Okay. I don't see anybody else raising their hand. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to come up and speak on behalf of this resolution for annexation? Nobody else. Mr. Ackerman, the floor is yours. 3 minutes.
That's hard. I don't have to hit the space bar, correct?
No, she got it.
Thank you. My name is Paul Ackerman. I'm the town attorney for the town of Beekman. Before I read a prepared statement on behalf of the town board, I just want to address a couple of things that was raised tonight. And the first thing is the issue with the cell tower. And I've heard a couple of times from members of the town of Unionvale Town Board Supervisor that this is not really an issue over the cell tower. If that's the case, and Unionville can take that off the table, then, there's an opportunity to discuss some of the remaining issues. I hear the remaining issues with regard to the constable. The Town of Union Code already provides that the constables have jurisdiction within the property located in the town of Beekman. If there's concerns with regard to some legality of that, the town of Beekman, I'm sure, is happy to discuss that. I think this is a new topic that's been raised to the town of Beekman, and there's definitely some ability to try to resolve that issue without annexation. There's multiple options that we can look at and work together with the town of Unionville to resolve that issue. The second issue is with regard to taxation, and clearly the taxation, the abatement of property and exemptions is set by state law. If for some reason the town of Union was improperly taxed and the exemption was not applied, there is a process to resolve that. And if that happens, we can discuss that. That is set by state law, and I don't feel that the annexation of this property from the town of Beekman into the town of Unionville on any tax dollars. The special assessments will continue to be paid, and if for some reason, if the property was improperly taxed, we can resolve that, and hopefully that will not happen in the future. So these seem to be the three issues that were raised tonight by Unionville, town of Unionville, and I think those are things that can be discussed, and we'd be happy to work with it. As far as control of the property, Unionville has, complete control of their property from the perspective of a property owner. I think somebody mentioned before that they have not heard of any dispute between Unionville and the town of Beekman with regard to the control of their property. I have asked around also and have gotten that response, and I don't think any members of the current town board are aware of any disputes with regard to property owned by Unionville and the town of Beekman, with the exception of the cell tower issue case. I'll now just read a brief statement on behalf of the town board. The town of Beekman is opposed to the petition for annexation of properties from the town of Beekman to the town of Unionville. If approved, this annexation will forever alter the historic boundaries of the town of Beekman that has existed since 1827. This action, which clearly arises based on a legal dispute over the placement of a telecommunication tower, seems like a drastic remedy. The town of Beekman fears that the motivation to settle legal disputes by annexation is a bad precedent to set. Since 1827, the historical boundaries of the town of Beekman have been established. These boundaries define the town of Beekman and have provided it with a unique identity. The town has spent countless dollars, hours, and resources building upon this identity by planning for its future. Those parcels which the town of Unionville proposes to annex to itself are all part of a valuable planning document, such as the Town of Beekman Comprehensive Plan adopted in 2007, the Open Space Plan adopted in 2005, and the Town Zoning Code updated in 2011. These parcels are specifically used in the town's calculation for open space. The removal of these sensitive natural resources incorporated in these planning documents will forever change the town's future. It is abundantly clear that the town of Unionville's motivation for this petition of annexation is an ongoing legal dispute over the placement of a telecommunication tower approximately 500 feet from a resident's home in the town of Beekman. The town of Unionville has strategically located this tower in a place that minimizes the impact on residents of its town, but that mitigation comes at a maximum expense to the residents of the town of Beekman. This matter is a pending appeal, which ultimately will be decided by the courts. In due course, this matter will be resolved one way or the other, and the parties will move on. It seems irrational to forever change history because of a legal dispute. Since the early 70s, the town has owned these properties in the town of Beekman, and there has never been any request to annex the properties to Unionville. Until now, the parties have lived in harmony, and the situs of the land in the town of Beekman was never an issue. It makes no sense to alter history now. If the town of Unionville disputes the reason for this annexation petition is the placement of a cell tower, I ask the town of Unionville to agree that no cell tower will be built on these properties.
The fact of the matter is that the town of Unionville finds the land use regulations of the town of Beekman onerous and does not believe that they should apply to them. The town of Beekman has determined that these parcels located in the town of Beekman are bucolic and should remain open space and altered as little as possible by development. The town of Unionville does not like the fact that the town of Beekman zoning code does not permit the erection of a 150-foot cell tower, which would be used to generate revenue for the town. Unionville's annexation petition seems to be the proverbial, I will take my ball and go home. I think if a private developer attempted to circumvent a municipality's land use regulations by annexing its property into a neighboring municipality for more favorable regulations, all would be in an uproar. Why shouldn't the town of Beekman be in uproar? Lastly, the town of Beekman's highway superintendent correctly questioned the impact of the petition on the residents of Lime Mill Road. The petition seeks to annex a large area of land adjacent to their properties along the road. That road is currently in the town of Beekman and under the condition and supervision of the highway superintendent. If the petition is granted, that portion will be annexed into the town of Unionville, leaving the residents with a question as to whether or not their properties would be landlocked or if they would have access to a road. For the foregoing reasons, the town of Beekman opposes the Unionville petition for annexation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Everybody spoken? Okay. Did we have any other business that we need to attend to? Mr. Nelson, would you like to speak? You are.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to make sure, as a procedural matter, that the clerk has included certain documents in the record of this public hearing. And I have a copy of the resolution 20-34 to proceed with the annexation with exhibits, as well as the annexation petition executed by the supervisor on October 2nd with exhibits. And I'd ask that copies of those be included in the record. Ms. Casey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nelson. They are.
Okay. In addition, there is an affidavit of service of October 9th of delivery to the Beekman clerk of the Unionville resolution and petition with exhibits and the lead agency notice and EAF. Will they be included in the record?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and the Poughkeepsie Journal affidavit of publication of notice of this joint hearing, pardon me, hearing?
That as well, too.
And the Unionville clerk's affidavit of posting of the hearing, petition, resolution, and exhibits on October 16th, as well as the Unionville clerk's affidavit of service by mail on October 23rd of the hearing notice to the Arlington School District, the Unionville and Beekman Fire Districts, the countywide water district, and the County Resource Recovery Agency.
Yes, all included in the record.
Okay, thank you.
That's it? Okay. Well, there's, I think that's covered, all of your business is covered, Mr. Nelson? Our business? If there's nobody else that's interested in speaking, that will conclude the hearing for tonight. And we appreciate everybody coming, and we appreciate all your thoughts. This hearing is closed.